I've been holding off on this one because it's one of the most special pieces of gear in my collection. While amps and DACs and headphones and sources and cables have all come and gone, this is one piece that never leaves. It's my Decware Taboo Mark III, and we're going to take a look at it today. Before we jump in, I'd like to ask a big favor of everybody. If you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do. Give it a like, hit the little bell, get the ding when new stuff comes out. Your comments and feedback are always welcome and encouraged. I've been really rewarded to hear from folks that have appreciated some of these videos, had differing opinions. You know, I just do this because I want to share back a little bit of what I've learned, because all the articles and blogs and forums I've read and videos I've watched have really helped me find my way through the confusing world of head-fi and audio in general. So yeah, help me help you. I love tubes. I love tube amps. I love tube preamps and tube phono stages. It's one of these things in the audiophile world. Solid state versus tube. Why can't we all just get along? I think everything has its place, has its benefits and deficits. But when it comes to amplification, I've had a lot of great solid state amps and I understand them and I appreciate them, but I always come back to tubes, whether it's for driving speakers or for driving headphones. That tube sound, when dialed in correctly, it is just so satisfying to me. It's got that balance of detail and sort of three-dimensionality and warmth and depth and just smoothness that I struggle to find in the solid state amplifiers I've had the experience to listen to. So what are we looking at today? I'm not going to be moving this thing around as much as I normally try to spin gear and headphones to show the camera, but I'll move it a little bit. This 17-pound beauty here is Decware's headphone amp. Decware makes a bunch of different amps, a bunch of just power amps and sort of kind of all-in-one preamp power amp things. I have another Decware amp that's in my main system. I have some bottlehead stuff as well. I've tried some other headphone tube amps, some lower market stuff, but I haven't gotten to try like Donald North Audio or Eddie Current or some of the other big sort of names in tube headphone audio. So you'll have to take everything I say with a bit of a grain of salt today, as I only am sort of referencing my experience with tube amps in the speaker world and solid state and tube amps in the headphone world and more down market tube amps. So I don't know how this compares to things sort of in its price class in terms of a pure headphone tube amp. So I'm just speaking to my experience with this amp, which I love. All right, that's enough preamble. Let's talk a little bit about speeds and feeds, which is something I don't typically do because I feel like you can look that stuff up on the website, but I don't think a lot of people are going to be as familiar with Decware, so I'll just try to break it down a little bit. American-based company, Steve Deckard, I think makes pretty much everything. Maybe he's got a little bit of help here and there, but pretty much he's designed all of it and he's doing most of the point-to-point wiring. There's no circuit boards. This is old school electronics and brilliant in that. Simplicity is a good thing, right? So this was originally a speaker amp. You can see there's actually still speaker taps out the back here. And I guess he'd been getting requests to put a headphone jack on it and finally did. And that sort of became the Taboo headphone line. And then they liked it so much they sort of redesigned it, really focusing on planars, specifically the LCD2, I think was the test bed for when this thing was really being turned into more of a headphone-oriented amp than a speaker-oriented amp. But they kept the speaker taps, and you can still use it to power high-efficiency speakers. It's got 2 sets of RCA ins. This is the Mark III. So right now in production would be the Mark IV. The Mark IV you can get with balanced inputs, XLR inputs. But this is the Mark III, and there's a couple other subtle differences, which I'll try to reference as we go. It's got 2/4-inch headphone jack outputs, but I generally find those to be kind of underwhelming. Really, where it's at is up here with the 4-pin XLR. There's two of them. You can run two sets of phones, which I do often when I'm comparing headphones to each other. Yeah, like I said, you got two inputs, and you've got you can adjust the volume of each channel for each input, which is kind of cool. Haven't found a lot of use for it, but it's nice. There's two switches back here, which are the Lucid mode, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then up here you can just switch between the two inputs, volume knob, and then the tubes, and we'll talk about those in great detail because that's really what this is all about. And of course, the transformer, which is, I guess, proprietary to Decware, and a little bit of what they sort of consider their secret sauce is the quality of their transformers. They don't buy off-the-shelf ones. They are made to their spec, and they believe that that's a pretty big part of the formula as to why their amps are so good. So, Lucid mode. Let's talk about that. One of the things that people really responded to when this amp came out was this sort of cross-feed, I guess, tweak of the circuit that was implemented. Apparently it was originally designed for speakers to kind of give them a bit more of that three-dimensional holographic sound. And when you use it in headphones, and I guess it was originally designed sort of with sort of 50 ohm impedance headphones to work really perfectly, it kind of just like pushes the sound out away from your head, and gives it this kind of, sort of bigger sound stage, which sometimes works brilliantly and sometimes just makes things wacky. In this variant, the Mark III, there are two Lucid modes, what they call their new and their old. I believe this side's the original and this side's the new. The original I mostly leave that on. It just kind of pulls things apart a little bit more, adds a little more separation, a little more three-dimensionality. The new one just makes things go crazy. It pushes them really far out. Sometimes it's cool and it works kind of well, but other times it just, things that you thought were in one channel end up in the other channel, and it's just wacky. And Dave has some essays about why that is and what's happening in the background. A little sciencey for me, but very cool. Anyway, so this is cool. This switch, and I don't leave it on all the time, but most of the time I do, is one of the reasons why this amp is so wonderful. Have I said that? This amp is wonderful. I love this amp. So I think all in power wise, you get about a max of 1.7 watts out of the headphone jacks and double that out of the speakers. So plenty of power to drive pretty much anything. I'd say the only thing that challenged it was the Beyerdynamics DT 880 600 ohm, my sort of most challenging headphone that I keep around. That I basically have the volume pinned. I mean, maybe one notch below on the potentiometer, but it's pretty much given all it's got to drive that. I am going to try to actually, apparently people will connect to the speaker taps to drive really hard headphones. And maybe if they need to drop a capacitor in the way or something to sort of like get it dialed in correctly. So I'm really curious to try that. I might try that and hopefully not blow up the DT880s. Anyway, I'll report back to you on that one. But most of this stuff, all the ZMF stuff, all the big planars from all the, Audeze and Kennerton and Hi-Fi Man, everything I've tried on it, no problem. Super happy to drive it. So the configuration here is a single input tube. This is a 6922 or a 6N 1P, very super common, right? There's so many tube options for the input tube. The output power tubes are EL84s or SV83s. It's kind of a smaller power tube, but and there's not just an insane plethora of options, but there's plenty of stuff to try. And then this is the rectifier, which is what is it? 5Y3GT or a 5U4 or a 5A4, 5AR4, or what? I think there's even other things. Yeah, 274B is another variant that works. This is the valve art that actually comes stock with this. So yeah, Steve sends it with a handful of, I think, primarily Russian made stock tubes, which, you know, he's picked and they sound great. But the beauty of this thing is it is a tube roller's dream. I mean, this thing, you can make it whatever you want. I mean, the base architecture is great and it just sounds amazing on its own. But if you want to push and pull those variables of, you know, heft and warmth and bass impact, or, you know, sort of 3D separation or hyper detail or whispery airiness, like, you can make this amp pretty much however you want it, and you can match it to your headphones, which I've had a lot of fun doing, you know, over the time I've owned it. And I think probably in the second half of this video, I'll talk about some tube options and tube rolling, or I might make it a second video. I don't know. It depends how long I ramble. But yeah, the ability to, you know, sort of tweak how the signal is being interpreted when it comes in, and then how it's being pushed out. And actually the rectifier, which I was like, that's not going to make a difference. But it has a lot of influence over certain aspects of the sound quality. Steve also calls out that the nice thing about having a tube rectifier is not only is it really good at its job, but I guess solid state rectifiers will tend to get damaged over time when they get like sharp peak loads, and they would be hardwired in, so they would not be serviceable. So not only is the tube potentially going to sound better and be more durable, but if it does get damaged, you can service it in the field without sending it back. So that's kind of a nice longevity thing. His amps are also self-biasing, so you don't even have to use like perfectly matched tubes in the output, which is like super nice. You do get these little gauges to actually tell you how the tubes are performing, which is kind of cool. It also just gives you a sense of life. If the tube's starting to fail, it gives you a little more feedback. And who doesn't love dials? They look cool. Some of the other fun things about getting an amp from Decware is you get to choose this base. You have a bunch of different wood options. You've got some really like decorative ones, some really simple ones. You get to pick your knob colors and materials and stuff. So it's a really like custom process. Each one's built to order, and you know, it's a very small company, obviously, and you can get in touch with them and get a call with Steve. And if you want a special feature, you want to ask him if you should use this or use that or wire it this way. He's accessible and he stands behind his work, and I think that's really rare and special in these times. You know, so that's I think also a little bit of the attraction to something like this. So like I said, they're in the Mark IV version now. And I think what they've done is they've done away with the 1/4 inch and the single-ended ones, and they've just gone for balanced outputs, although you could probably request a 1/4 inch if you really wanted it. And you can, like I said, get balanced inputs, which is only going to sort of improve that signal path and, you know, give you stronger signal coming in, which is nice. The other thing I guess that's interesting about the Mark IV is that instead of having these like 2 Lucid mode switch, there's just a crazy Lucid mode dial, which you can be like more crazy, less crazy. So that's fun. And they've done 2 channel volume, which seems a little wacky. So you've got like a left and right volume knob, which I don't know if there's like a way to lock them so they stay together. If you just have to like sit there and like tweak them. Okay, a little more. Anyway, I guess there's probably some use cases where that's a handy thing. Oh, right. How does it sound? Why do you love this amp so much, Adrian? Right. How does it sound? why do you love this amp so much? This amp is very wide, very open, lots of separation. I'll use that word. It's sort of holographic. You get a real sense of the room when you're listening to it. You get, I don't know if it's just implied or if it's really there, but you get a sense of the space that the music was recorded in. It's got quite a bit of life and energy. Like the music really feels alive. I'm not going to say it feels like you're at the performance because you're hearing something that might have been recorded in a studio, but it just, it just feels dynamic. It just feels punchy and exciting. And in some ways that means it's a little less tidy and organized. So like if you were listening to really hard hitting, very like modern producer style music that's just all about tightness and it might not be the perfect amp for that because it doesn't put hard stops on things. It lets things bleed a little bit into each other, but that creates this smoothness and this naturalness. I listen to this amp all day. It's totally unfatiguing, but I think a lot of times when something's unfatiguing, it's because it's boring and it's quiet and it gets out of your way. And that's not the case with this amp. It's like I said, it's got that detail and intensity that are really rewarding to listen to, but it does it in a way that just doesn't burn you out. And that's pretty fantastic. The bass is deep and rewarding, and there's some tubey warmth there. Again, you can sort of dial that up and dial that down, based on your preferences. Sorry, it's hard to talk and move this thing at the same time because it does weigh a ton, and I would hate to drop it. So take a break. There's a little pan for you. I know it's a pretty visually boring video here today. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the jam. You can find these things occasionally on the used market. There's a Decware forum that has a classified section. That's where I'd look. I'd spend time there if you want one in the used market. You can save a ton of money picking one of these up used because they're desirable and there's not that many of them. But anything that's this custom and unique, like it does take a pretty huge hit on value once you drive it off the lot. Okay, so we'll do a part 2 to talk about tube rolling, some of the things I've heard and liked. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this or any other videos on the channel, be sure to subscribe, give it a like, and yeah, check back. We'll do a part 2 on the tube rolling real soon. This is Signcraft, signing out.